Man,
How was it?
this was bad. So, Brightburn, 2019, directed by David, I'm going to butcher this, David Yarovesky? Sounds about right. Written by Brian and Mark Gunn, brothers of James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy films. He produced this project. It is about a young alien boy crash landed on Earth who is then raised by his parents, but instead of following in the path of the traditional Superman story, he instead decides to use his powers for evil.
Well, that pretty much sums up every single thing that you're going to learn in this entire movie.
Yeah, it's basically, so right now this is like our non-spoiler section. We're going to try and keep this pretty short, but yeah, this is pretty bad.
There's enjoyable parts, then there's a hell of a lot of unenjoyable parts.
Yeah.
It does exactly what it sets out for and nothing else.
Right. If you guys are familiar with the evil Superman concept, you're not really going to find anything new here, unfortunately, which the trailers and even some of the earlier scenes would have you believe that it's going to maybe take some new route or shed some new light or probably show a different angle of the same story we've heard in instances like Injustice or Red Sun Superman. You're really just not going to find anything that innovative here.
And it's hard to compare it to one of those stories because those have a lot more research and development into the DC universe more than this had.
Right.
Because it's more of its own set-alone story, kind of like how the Unbreakable stories are,
right,
in the overall sense of how they're all connected and whatnot. But I think this movie does a very interesting thing of being a super villain movie, which we haven't seen very many of other than Suicide Squad at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes... I'm interested that it takes the role of being a horror superhero film.
Not a lot of those.
Yeah, we haven't
New Mutants got pushed back a bunch.
Yeah, which unfortunately sucks that we got this in its place.
Right.
It doesn't really work as a holdover. What was another horror superhero film? Wasn't there?
I can only think of Split and Unbreakable.
I think
3.
that is. I think that's
the only.
I think it is Split and Glass and
the
New
first
Mutants.
one. Yeah, New Mutants.
Yeah.
And then Deadpool's, they got the R rating, but
and I mean it's got the gore too.
This definitely goes for more of shock value, as many of the old horror movies used to.
So,
I think it's very run-of-the-mill supervillain movie and very run-of-the-mill horror movie.
I definitely agree with you on the run-of-the-mill horror movie thing. It really, I think the horror movie aspect, the whole, specifically the genre of slasher, serial killers, I think it really restricts this movie.
Yeah, because it does too much shock value with no story added.
Exactly. There's we'll get into it more in the spoiler section, but there's just think about it like this. The concept of evil Superman works because Superman is so powerful and threatening and intimidating. It's intriguing to understand what comes after, what unfolds as a result of that. But what doesn't work here in this instance is that it's evil Superman, essentially, but he still has to follow the traditional horror tropes. He still has to follow the traditional serial killer tropes. He has to stalk his victims. He has to be silent and quiet.
Play footsie with them a little bit.
Exactly. It's a lot of
very stereotypical horror genre type stuff.
And it kind of breaks the immersion a little bit because there are moments where you think to yourself, this guy is bulletproof. He can pick up cars and fly.
He has laser vision.
There's almost no reason why he should be restricting himself or being restricted to suddenly just turning into Michael Myers and instead of just immediately killing off one of his victims.
And I originally thought before going into this movie that him being a kid would almost be scarier. Mm-hmm. It turns out it's not.
It kind of
takes away from the fact.
Yeah, especially when we just don't really know anything about this character. We don't really know a lot about any of the characters, which is it's unfortunate because the whole point of the movie is to kind of show you, I guess, how it is. Someone who's grew up being so perfect and nice could turn into basically the world's worst nightmare.
The perfect killing machine.
But that doesn't really work when we don't get a chance to understand his motivations. We don't really get a chance to know who he is as a person or understand how it is all the things that are going on around him are affecting him.
Exactly.
It's just kind of happening, and then the movie's just kind of going by the numbers, really.
And with that, would you like to get into the spoilers?
Yes, I would, but before we do, we're going to go ahead and, for any of you that for some reason want to go see this movie, I don't personally recommend doing so, but if you want to just end the video and then go see this movie, our ratings right now are going to stand as, for me, 4 out of 10. I think this is below average.
Yeah.
Lincoln?
I think it was a crisp 6 out of 10. I think that it does some stuff right, but it takes away a lot of what it's trying to do.
Just kind of average.
It just unfolds, yeah, kind of an average 5 o'clocker, as someone would say.
Uh,
But I would go see it. I just wouldn't have high expectations.
right. So with that, I guess we're going to go ahead and jump right into the spoiler section. Okay, so like all these instances where the main character, Brandon Breyer, I guess you could say main character, it doesn't really focus on him that much. You just don't know much about him. You know, you don't really understand his motivations. What was an interesting concept for me that kind of just ended up ruining most of the film, honestly, was how they kind of introduced this idea that maybe he's part of an alien species that has some kind of hive mind or some kind of way of introducing sleeper agents and kind of like waking them up whenever they're crash landing on some distant planet, in this case Earth. And
kind of like a beacon from the ship
that
like, wakes him up in the middle of the night.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea that he wasn't really in control of it. Like, he was kind of like a normal person. He had his own personality, but then all of a sudden he was just kind of being seized.
You kind of forget that he's an alien for the first few minutes.
Yeah.
You just think he's a normal kid.
Yeah.
There's a nice little bit they do, though, whenever he first wakes up and he's getting out of bed. He has the red blanket, and it tropes over him a little bit, and it looks like the cape before it becomes the cape.
Yeah.
It's a nice little wink that they did.
But the problem that stems from that concept in and of itself is just how underutilized it is. Because
that's like the last time they talk about it.
Aside from when he discovers that that whatever this beacon is telling him, whatever this disembodied voice is telling him, is that it wants him to take over the world. And which is just out of nowhere. We don't understand the motivation behind it.
There's not like... it doesn't have like any manual.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell you like this is this race, this is what we do.
We don't.
Blah blah blah.
And granted, originally I didn't need that, but when you start throwing in all this stuff about how he's being practically mind controlled, or is he? Like that annoys me so much when they try to play two sides of a completely different coin.
There's
like,
one side that he just was always like this.
Yeah.
And just needed to kill everybody.
Yeah.
And then there's a side that maybe the ship did it.
Yeah. Like maybe he's being mind controlled, or maybe he really is a psychotic kid that's enjoying what it is that he's doing. Because sometimes they play it up that he does.
Yeah.
Like when he talks about how he's like superior to people.
And he's got all the pictures of intestines and stuff.
Yeah, and then it's like, whoa, pick one. You can't have it both ways. You can't have it be where he's being mind controlled, but then he suddenly enjoys it almost free from the mind control.
Right.
Because at that point, it's like, why?
What was the point of introducing one or the other?
Well, then what's his motivation for doing these things? Like, why does he enjoy these things? From what we can only tell in the very beginning is that he's like a slightly antisocial kid. He's kind of dweeby.
He gets picked on. Why doesn't he ever kill the bully?
I don't know.
He kills all these other people that are important to him. There's this one black kid that bullies him. Why doesn't he kill that one kid?
It kind of baffles the brain because there are just so many things that are picked up as a plot element, but then dropped almost a few scenes later.
And they're all stereotypical.
Mm-hmm.
What was your second worst?
My second worst thing about the movie? Oh, God. Okay, so you remember in our Avengers podcast, and like one of my biggest complaints was how they did the 5-year skip thing?
Immediately in this movie.
The whole...
The first 3... I looked at my phone. It was like the first 4 minutes into the movie. They immediately go 10 years later.
Oh, God. It's like they think about that. They literally left out the scene where they discovered the It ends the scene.
And they don't have a flashback to it.
They don't have a flashback to it. The only kind of flashback they have is like a nightmare sequence But like even that's a dream.
And it just doesn't even show anymore than you already saw.
Exactly.
Like, it just shows that again.
It ends the opening scene with just them seeing it out in their backyard. It doesn't show them going up to it. It doesn't show them
finding a baby. It just goes. It just shows some baby pictures.
And then 10 years later.
And
you know what? I get it. I get that I'm supposed to like just get the picture and you want to get on with the show.
They only had 90 minutes to set this whole thing up.
But it's like, bro, that's just so lazy. Because think about that. That means they literally skipped over this entire kid's life and then just opened with him being evil. We don't know anything about him. We don't know what he was like as a kid.
Can we talk about the time problem that we figured out? So it goes from him being an infant to 10 years later, but he's 12 years old.
It's his 12th birthday.
And then she's looking up asteroid events that happened in 2006, but this movie came out in 2019.
And I don't remember seeing anything that indicated that it was in like 2016 or 2018 or something like that.
So that means it's also 13 years after he's been on Earth. So I don't know if they just didn't do any editing right, or
I think that this writing for this movie is just bad.
I think this was a very, very rushed movie.
I agree with you. I think this was rushed because this was made by Sony. Sony has this bad habit of just basically copying other movies. So like when Lego Movie came out,
how dare you?
They came out with Emoji Movie.
How dare you?
What?
Make such an obvious statement.
Oh. The MCU is popular and they tried to do the same thing with Spider-Man before it got shut down.
And then they loaned Spider-Man to the MCU.
Exactly.
To cut in on the money.
And then Split comes out, and then new trailer for New Mutants came out sometime last year or 2 years ago or something like that.
I think it's been almost 2 years
now.
Yeah. Because it came out around this time I went and saw Logan.
And then I heard that it's going to be coming out either at the end of this year or next year. And so Sony was like, well, we got to put out a product that's almost exactly like that. So let's see, what should we do here? We can't really come up with any clever plot of our own. Hey, let's borrow from the most popular superhero of all time.
The first superhero.
Like, it's just so obviously lazy. Like, for instance, for some reason the character Brandon is like fixated on this one little girl.
And then they drop that plot almost immediately after.
Yeah, and what's even worse is that they call attention to the fact that he's indicating that he's not gonna he'll be back.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't. He never comes back. That little girl never shows up again.
He breaks her hand, kills her mom, leaves her to be orphaned, I guess, because we don't see that she has a dad.
No. Yeah, we don't know that at all.
We don't know where that story is.
And you know what else?
Did the nightmare scene make any sense to you?
With the dad?
Yeah.
No.
There's a forest outside of his room, and then he just goes wandering in the forest for a little bit.
I don't really get it. Like, I guess the idea is that he had fear, or he had doubt, or something like that. Or maybe it's just supposed to be some stupid nightmare where he's, like, totally regretting his decision of, like, letting this kid into his house. Which, by the way, can we just
realistically,
how
unless it's Clark Kent himself, why are you letting a baby that just came out of an asteroid or a spaceship in your house?
Yeah, exactly. And then just be so totally cool with it and fine with it for like 10 years.
And how disassociated is this mom about it?
Oh God, yeah. Where she's just
like seeing the evidence, like it's smacking her in the face, and it takes a notebook with pictures in it to turn her sides.
Yeah, it literally the evidence that says I was totally like right here doing these terrible things.
Is him drawing the pictures?
I mean, I get it. You know, like mother's love and all that. You know, honestly, it didn't bother me as much as like the dad who.
He clearly was on the audience's side.
He was on the audience's side, but at the same time, it's like, come on. He whenever they're like suspicious of Brandon, he's immediately like, okay, well, he's never bled in his life. He's never been sick, and it's like, whoa. You're just now bringing this up as like something that should be kind of freaking odd. Come on, man. That's just literally ignoring the evidence.
All right. After all that, what do you like?
Honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think the only good parts about the movie are the actual killings of his victims.
Yeah, I think the scary shock value parts where they're setting it up like a horror movie.
No, I hate all that stuff.
Yeah,
I hate that they're.
I like it sometimes, But then sometimes when they've just done it for 30 minutes and then they do it some more.
Yeah.
too
Like
much.
when it's just not necessary. Like when he's killing his dad.
Wow, why does that happen? Why does that have to take an extra 10 minutes?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
There's when
no
he
reason.
actually does kill his dad, though,
It's badass.
amazing. Why isn't the whole movie just that?
Yeah, why did they have to like spend 5 minutes of him just like zipping around his dad's head? And why not just have him zoom across the field, grab his dad, and shoot lasers through his skull?
Why, when this movie is so short, does a lot of it get wasted on him like stalking his prey?
I mean, I guess that in the end they were like, they didn't have the budget to be like, we can just show. I mean, you know what? That's not true either. I mean, they had so many other scenes at the end of the movie of him destroying like big buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's no reason they couldn't have had more scenes of him just going all out and destroying stuff. They padded the movie out with these slow scenes for someone that can move at like the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense at all.
The end scene where you think he's gonna die for a second?
That scene, okay, yeah, that scene, I like that scene because I had thought to myself,
They like kind of saved the movie.
it kind of saved it a little bit right there at the end because if it had just ended the movie with like his mom stabbing him in the back with like a piece of the metal,
Which they had discovered earlier,
which
was
is like
the only thing that could hurt
kill
him. His kryptonite, you might say.
which stems into another issue, another dropped plot line. Carrying on, get to that in a second. His mom is about to stab in the back, and I was like, man, if this happens, if the movie ends like this is like 0 out of 10 material. Like, this is just bad.
This is an open and shut.
Exactly. Then
comic,
at that
but-
point, it's like, wow, there's literally no reason for any of this to exist or
Right.
happen.
This is a cool one-shot comic book, but
I mean,
Yeah.
if that.
like this is an open and shut like short story.
Exactly. But then, luckily, the movie didn't go that direction. It actually went the direction I was actually kind of like wondering whether or not they were going to go and just have him kill his mom and proceed to just take over the world, basically, or destroy it or what have you.
It was a very Nightcrawler ending.
Yeah, I really liked it, but even then they kind of like still screwed up because for some reason he tries to
covers
like
it up.
he tries to like cover up the fact that he didn't have anything to do with his parents' death or something like
At
that.
that point, why don't you just like, you know, put the glasses on and be like, I'm Clark Kent and Superman.
Or just completely abandon any kind of secret identity. Like
Yeah.
you literally are.
You're
can
God at this
destroy.
point.
Exactly, you can destroy the world.
And then he still ends up like signing it still.
But you know what's even like more dumb than that? They don't tell us what happens to the spaceship.
Why was it important?
Because like think about it like this: he knows that it can hurt him. He knows his mom just tried to kill him with it.
Doesn't even
Where
bury,
to go?
Doesn't even bury it or anything.
Exactly. We
It's
don't.
just at his. It's just underneath this. It's just underneath the airplane.
Yeah, it's just stupid. That's literally just being like, okay, we introduced this for some reason. Oh, we forgot what it was. But yeah, I guess that's really it for
6 out of
Brightburn.
10.
4 out of 10. I
6.
still don't recommend it. Is there anything else? Is there anything good or bad we can still say about it, or is it really just one of those open and shut cases?
I think it's an open and shut case that it wasn't very good, but I think that it has some good scenes,
Right.
and it doesn't have a lot going for it because it's opening with a bunch of other good movies at the time.
Right.
Theater was kind of half full, half empty.
I did like that.
I was very half and half about this movie,
I
and
did-
I had the same feeling I had going into it.
Right. I like that one part when we were in the theater when the waitress in the diner, when she got that glass in her eye,
It was pretty intense.
and everybody in the audience was like, ugh. And even like, and it didn't make me groan or anything, but anytime I see something like that in a horror movie happen to someone's eye, my eyes always water.
Always. It's an immediate reaction.
But yeah, we're gonna go ahead and get out of here, and we will catch you guys next time.
Like and subscribe.